again, hindsight's a wonderful thing. Would I do what we did again? 100% not. We just couldn't give them the monthly rebate, and everybody said, what do we do? You know, what do you do? Because they're going to come at us and they could probably put us out of business. There is only one thing that matters: cash in your bank. The only reason you want profit is ego. It was messy. It ended up going, they tried to take us to, well, we ended up taking them to tribunal because they tried to take us as badly. It was horrible. But it needs to happen. We need to take control back of our lives. I certainly did.
Simon Pickering, he's old school. He says it himself, he's old school. He has seen changes in industry from before the internet, before mobile phones, and he made his money in mobile, working through For You, up to building his own business into a multi-million pound empire where he had the Ferrari, the nice house, only to lose it all. This story tells you his journey, what he's been through, and how he picks himself up and rebuilds another telecoms business from the ground up. I'm Richard Osborne. This is UKBF Stories, sharing with you the journey of small business owners across the UK. Nationwide, and sort of getting that sort of working in that kind of environment that both experienced and things taking ages, that's when mobile phones were starting to become a thing, and you had the big bricks.
Still got a couple of those in the office.
That basically put your back out when you're carrying them over your shoulder. And you then went to For You.
I did.
Yeah, and from my memory, but fill in the blanks, that is into telecoms.
Yeah, I went, so you're right, after Nationwide, I went into GE actually. So I left Nationwide. I got frustrated at Nationwide. I'm impatient. I went for promotion, didn't get it. Went into HR, asked why. They gave me the reason, which I didn't agree with. Well, I'm out of it. So I went and found another job. It was not in General Electric at that time, which was the Jack Welch business, but they got bought about 6 months after I joined, and that was selling or leasing the big articulated trailers, so renting those out. Really fun business. You wouldn't think it's fun, by the way. When I say trailers, it's hardly fun, but it's amazing when you actually start to do it and you look on the motorway how many actually you see that are rented. I haven't given it up yet, and I could probably still give you all the codes for every single one because you had to learn them off by heart. But it was a great experience, phenomenal training. It was a Jack Welch era. Most people in business will have read the Jack Welch book. I know everybody will sit there, it's outdated management, but I think a lot of it can be adapted to today. I don't think that's changed. And it was a wonderful business to be involved, just from training, development, people, contacts. It was great. Then moved on to For You business. So John Cordwell had Phones for You that everybody will know. But they also had just started to sell into businesses. So retail had gone crackers on phones, absolutely bananas. But no one had really picked up the mantle for business. So Carphone at that stage was just starting, and For You business was dwarfed out of Phones for You. The idea being you replicate what Phones for You did. Obviously, there were not many businesses, and there were challenges in that business. I was there for about a year. So, but again, great learning, fast-paced business. Had the opportunity in there because it was under pressure. So it was the time John was trying to sell the business. Therefore, that was a part of the business that wasn't performing as it should have been.
You was given quite a hefty task when you joined there.
A really tough task. So actually, one of the guys I set up my first business with went in there. And when we arrived in, we thought, well, we're here to go and grow it. Well, the reality was very different. It was losing a substantial amount of money a week, had about 1,000 people in it, way too many, had 500 salespeople. I mean, 500 salespeople going to sell to businesses mobile contracts that are 2 years. I think they were 12 months then, and they just flicked to 2 years. You're never going to hit your numbers. So it was definitely underwater, and it was obviously impacting his sale, which rightly so he wanted to get through. So the remit was quite simple. Take a look at the business and figure out whether we can trim it to get it performing, or it needs something doing with it, or shutting. And it ended up being shutting it because it just wasn't viable for the scale. So the idea was the right idea. You take the For You business and think, well, if I flick everybody every 12 months and I'm recycling, but the problem is there's probably 50 million people that will take mobile phone contracts as a consumer. There just weren't that volume of business. And then you think you time people into 24 months, your pool of people is quite low.
So two questions really. How do you approach, when you come into an environment that you think you're coming in to grow and do a business, how does your mindset switch to, actually, I've now got to close this all down? And
we weren't there, so I think if I cut it into sections for the first 6 months was really, and we were working there, so the first 6 months was really running a team of I think I had eight different branches, so you had 5, 6 salespeople in each. So get to know the business. You still thought you were growing at that stage. Behind the scenes, I'm sure there were different conversations going on. But you quickly understood that, to try and hit the numbers you were expected to hit was tough to do. We, as a board level sales team in that business, were sat down to say, what do you think? How do you think we can do things differently? It would cost a fair bit of money to reshape the business. I think at board level, right the way up at the group level, it was just shut it. And that was tough. So you sat there and went, I've just jumped ship from a 12 year career in one of the biggest businesses and growth businesses in the world that I could have stayed in quite happily and gone to another one and been happy in what I was on. I wanted a change. I took the change. It didn't work out. As I said earlier, I'm quite pragmatic with that kind of thing. I kind of looked and went, okay, but this is a good industry. And the great thing about it was that we were given access to some really good marketing teams. So we started to model up, probably 2 or 3 of us, what a good business would look like and why would it look that way. So whilst we were busy shutting it, we were also modelling up in the background what could it look like and how could it work. So we got to that 3 or 4 months. So wasn't the journey I expected to go on, but again was a great learning. And I think it's part of that journey in life you go through where you learn. And that was massive learning for me.
And mobile telecoms in particular, I read quite a while ago now, but it was the only industry that continued to grow during the 80s, early 90s recession and the credit crunch, when all other industries are in decline. During a recession, mobile communications continue to grow and grow and grow.
But you look at it now, and even if I take it to today's market, and we hear about the cost of living consistently, and it's tough for everybody out there right now. And I sit at home and you will have conversations at home. I have a conversation with my wife about it and sit there and go, I guarantee you now that nearly everybody will have probably a high-end smartphone paying 40, 50 quid to a network every single month. Now, is it a luxury or is it you've got to have it? And it feels like you've got to have it. It's strange, isn't it?
My household is a household of 4. So myself, my wife, I've got a 17-year-old son and a 20-year-old daughter. We do not have a phone line going into the house. We don't have a landline line at all, but we have 4 mobiles. I've never actually really thought about it, but it's normal.
But that's how everybody views it. It's funny when we're talking about how people did business in the 80s. Well, pre-mobile, I joke about it now. I've got some in my behind, so again, it's kind of a prop, but it's a great icebreaker, by the way. I've got an old phone that you do this with, so you put your finger in, you dial it, and that's how we used to communicate, letter and phone. Now you watch it's a Love Actually film all over again, where everybody's like this in the airport, and I drive my son to school every morning, and he's like this. I'm just like, you're going to get arthritis in your son, your thumb's going to go shortly. But it is viewed, I think, as a necessity. I think you look at Sky TV or BT or whichever other cable ones out. Again, for me, that's quite a luxury. But does everybody view it that way? I'm not sure they do. But that's why it's grown. And then I I think your big you kind of had two big explosions if you think about it. You had the bricks, then you had the trusted, lovely Nokia that I loved, that was had a battery.
Throw off a bridge and it'd still work.
The battery life of about a week. No matter how much you talked, it never seemed to go down. So you had all that explosion really in the 80s and 90s, and then mid 2000s, 05, I think 05, 06, the iPhone hit. Now that changed the planet and impacted, and you've seen that growth. The financial crisis came, but if you think about when that hit, 08, 09, 10, that is when Apple was going, Samsung was coming in, and everybody had to have the latest iPhone.
We've been talking about that change in mobile communication and sort of how that changed, and you got an insight into the communications industry for you.
Yeah.
And that point is where you started your first business.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, we got access to a great marketing team. We modelled it up. There were three of us. One person I knew really well. So one of the shareholders I went into business with, I'd been through GE for 10 years. So we had a really good relationship. I worked for him most of the time. I worked for him for you. So really, he brought me into the business. And then one of the other sales directors, he got to know well. We sat down together and went, there's a good opportunity here. And we'd modelled it already. And we actually did it at my kitchen table with a projector onto the wall. My wife was pregnant with our first child. We'd just moved house. I timed it really well. Timing for me is a running thing sometimes personally. So I decided to leave. I got married. She was pregnant and we just bought our first house. So fantastic, and I'm just leaving a job. We found a template online to build a business plan. Massive, great thing. It was about 40 pages. And
you're one of the few people that sat down here and said they actually had a business plan.
Yeah, well, we thought we better had, because we were going into try.
I think it did you well as we get through this story.
Yeah, it did. It did do us very well, actually. So we knew we needed a bit of money. We weren't going to, again, hindsight's a wonderful thing. Would I do what we did again? 100% not. I mean, we got, right, what we'll do is we'll start our business 2 weeks after shutting this, or a month after, and what we'll do is we'll go and employ 18 salespeople, because that sounds a really clever thing to do, and try and pay them.
If you excuse the expression, I'll just read word for word what I've just wrote in my notes here, big balls. Literally, when I sit there and think, 3 offices, that level of staff, and 18 leased cars, all on day one. Well,
the leased cars was great, and it was, funnily enough, I still see him today. So it's Giles Bolton, who now works at Grosvenor, was down at BMW. How we pulled it off, I don't know. So you had 18 sales. Bear in mind, we had the pick of 300-400 salespeople who were going to, either gone or were going. So we looked at it and went, right, we've got 18 top salespeople here. How much are they going to cost us each month? So we worked that bit out. We haven't got quite enough money from our own money, so we managed to get Barclays to match our money as an overdraft, by the way. Wouldn't do a loan, overdraft. Guaranteed against your house. On the big business plan we did. And we then managed to get these BMWs. And again, we didn't go small. We did a launch of the business at Whittlebury to all the staff. So we lined all these BMWs up. And if you ever said, my wife's still got the plate now, so it's W15HVP for her, which is Wish, which was the business name. So we started with 18. And yeah, it was a real eye-opener, I would call it. Wow, there were some lessons learned over an 8-year period.
Starting with the very first lesson.
Yeah.
I don't know how the business is done, so I'm intrigued, because you started with 3 of you putting some money in, and the money being matched by a bank, but not a lot of money, by any standards, really, for something taking on that immediately liabilities. So did it start with a boom going straight up, and or was there getting a little bit sort of seat of your pants?
It was seat of your pants. So it was a risk. I would say calculated, but I'm probably being kind to myself. It was a risk, but the industry was very different then. So the way the networks worked at that stage was they would pay you. You go and, I mean, I don't like mobile phones. The reason I like SIM cards, I don't like phones 'cause I have to pay for them. SIM cards I got paid for. So you would go and sell a 2-year deal and you get X. So let's call it, I don't know, 400 quid, 500, whatever the number is. Out of that, you then got to, I don't know, you'll see them, they do cashbacks, buy people out of contract, give them a phone. Obviously we give phones away, they're never bought, they're all lent, we give them. We don't really, obviously, it always makes me smile. And then you've got a gross margin. Out of the gross margin, you've got commission, you've got everything else you've got to pay. So it's quite a simple business model. What you figured out was I've got to connect that amount of connections every month to deliver payroll. The way, again, the networks were great at that stage because they wanted volume, so they paid you every 14 days for what you did. So from a cash flow point of view, fantastic. You get paid, I'm not saying they paid you accurately, but you got paid majority of what you owed. Quite a basic sales driven model. We need to do, let's say, 500 connections a month. That will deliver all the payroll and a profit of X. So we knew our numbers, and it's taught me well. If we went to 550, guess what? We've got this. Now the first 3 months were great because obviously there was a pipeline from people coming into the business. There was one thing we didn't take into account. So we were flying. For the first 3 months, I'm not kidding you, we were sitting there after 3 months going, we were making really good profit. We're sitting there going, what's everybody so worried about being in business? I don't get it. What's so hard? What we didn't realise was that when someone disconnects or doesn't pay, the network comes back and takes all of your commission. So not only have you lost all your commission, you've also paid for a phone, you've also paid the salaries, you've paid this, and the following 4 months, the P&L did not look so healthy. In fact, it went into reverse quite quickly, cash became tight, and you were sitting there going, oh, we've now got a problem. So that was the first lesson I learned, is don't get blinded by 3 months of good performance and think it's going to go all the way through. And by the way, understand what your supplier can do to you from a clawback point of view before you get all excited.
Geez, in a similar vein, my first business was selling domain names before things went down. Experienced a similar sort of thing. I was making money in my sleep, and the business people were buying domain names off my website, thinking they could sell them for thousands.
Yeah.
This is in the late 90s.
Yeah.
And then somebody got sued for trying to sell, I think it was Coca-Cola.com to Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola sued them back and won. And then everybody started charging back their cards saying I didn't do this transaction. And literally, it nearly sunk me. But the banks were ripping the money out of the account. I had Jaguar type brochures on my living room floor, like, oh, you make so much money. And it's so easy when you think you're up here and something changes and the rug gets taken.
100%. And I think it served me well until today. I mean, I don't ever think now, wow, we've made it. We're doing really well this year. So what we'll go and do is we'll do this. I treat it now exactly as I did then when I learned the tough lesson, which is, okay, we may be having a good year. Yes, we may be. Right, great. Now, what's going to happen next year? What's the risk we've got? What's this? How do we get the business so it is so stable? Should that happen, we haven't got a problem. And we obviously know there's going to be some choppy waters over the next couple of years. Even if you look at when COVID hit, I mean, we were lucky. I mean, we were lucky for two reasons. One, we're a contracted revenue business, so 80 to 90, probably 90% of our business is contracted. So that was the good news. Yeah. The next bit of news was, get on Credit Safe really fast, run a report for me, tell me what sectors we've got, and tell me anything we've got in hospitality, tell me anything we've got in aviation, and tell me fast. Now, it wasn't by design, by the way, but we had hardly anything. So we were really lucky. But if we had been a comms business that was in hospitality or aviation, we would have been in real trouble.
And is that something was there an experience during your time at Wish that sort of made you that alert?
Yeah, I've had probably the most, I think it did me the world of good. Yeah. It didn't feel like it at the time. And this was probably 2-3 years into the business, and one of the networks came up with a tariff. And if you did enough volume, you could literally And this is when health and safety came out with lone worker. So all care homes at that stage were sending people into people's homes with no way of saying whether they were in trouble, weren't in trouble, couldn't get back. So they had to do something. So you could basically stack a tariff for them that would cost them probably £2 a month with a phone, no more. Now for that, if you did enough volume, you started to get some big rebates back. So we had a lot of cash swilling around. What you can't do is give everybody the cash up front. So you bank the cash, and then every month you would rebate back into them off their bill because they had to pay the network direct. So we were swimming. Yeah. So foolishly, we went, let's try, we should expand. Let's just not stay in what we're doing. Let's try our hand. So we did. Trying our hand at something else didn't go so well, but we'd obviously use cash that should be going somewhere else. We'd had a downturn somewhere else. All the things that you probably shouldn't do, we did. And we got down to about 8 or 9 big care homes that we just couldn't give them the monthly rebate. And everybody said, what do we do? What do you do? Because they're going to come at us and they could probably put us out of business. So I went, look, do you know what? I'm going to call them. What's the worst that's going to happen? So I had to pick the phone up to 8 owners of businesses and have a conversation that went along the lines of, we have a challenge. There's 2 things you can do. You can work with us, and the commitment is I will phone you every week with a financial update for you and when you'll get your money, or you can come at me and you'll probably put me out of business. Just by making that call was the best thing I could have done. I committed to ring them every week, is what I did. Every single one worked through it with us. Every single one got their money, and every single one stayed a customer, and I still deal with some of them now through relationship. But let me promise you, when you have to phone someone up to say, I can't afford to pay you, that is humbling. But has stood me in really, really good stead. Really good stead going forward. Massive learning. And it just probably controls your ego a little bit when you're in business. And ultimately it can run away with you a little bit.
Was it at your time in Wish that your love of Apple developed?
Do you know what? Everybody says to me, why haven't you got an app? By the way, as a product, as a business, I take my hat off to them. But you've got to consider, we started that business in 06.
Frame the question that way, knowing what's...
It's a good question. So in 06, we'd get X amount of pounds, then we'd have to buy the phone. Yeah. For 3 years, the average price of a handset was £68. Then the iPhone came. Yeah. The average price of the handset by the time we sold that business in 2013 was just under £300 a handset, and we were paid no more money up front. So it was I call it the cash killer. I don't call it an iPhone, I just call it a cash killer, because that's what it is. And then they get this great idea, they're going to bring a new one out every year. So everybody wants one every single year. New. And they want to burn it down over 24 months or 12 months. Well, you just expect me to give it to you. So when you take a new...
So it's a consumer expectation.
Oh, consumer expectation. But I think business is consumer now, if I'm honest with you. I don't see there's a lot of difference. I think it's quite blurred lines. But if I came to you and you said, right, Simon, I want you to give me, I want a phone contract with you and I want 20 iPhones. Right, I have to spend the money up front. You don't want to spend the money up front. You want to take that over 24 months at, £40 a month. I've spent the money. So I don't get into positive cash flow on an iPhone deal at a low level until probably month 19. That's when I start to see positive cash. So we took the decision. It was a tough decision, by the way, for dbfb, because a lot of their business was local and a lot of it was what I would call Soho or consumer, which is all iPhone heaven. So what I would call the 1 to 10 market. And we took a decision we didn't want to be in it, because it's network. And the network's got pots of cash, and they've got great deals with Apple, and Apple don't do deals. Apple is, that's the price. Other manufacturers will be a bit different, but I'm not a popular fan of it from a business point of view, but from a business, from what it's done and how it's transformed, life, and it has transformed life. I take my hat off to them.
It's probably commoditised the mobile, played a big part in commoditising the mobile phone, I'd imagine. In that side, it's led to it being like 4 people in a household all got phones. But I wasn't expecting what you say to go down that way, but I can see, I imagine it'd be some sort of way they operate business. I don't know when I asked the question, but hearing what you're saying there, literally your customers expect, because we'd probably be like your favourite customers. As a company, we just do SIM-only deals.
Perfect. We'll have a conversation when we finish.
Because I did the maths and worked out if we take a SIM-only deal, it's this much. If we just buy the iPhones, so buy the iPhone and then the SIM-only, and then I forward project, if I replace my phone every 2 years, it actually works out better in the long run for me to buy the phone.
I have this conversation with businesses, and I mean large businesses, every day, and all our salespeople do, where we're saying to them, look, if you go and get it from a network, all you're doing is financing money. They don't give you the phone. But that world doesn't exist where they're giving it. You're paying for it. One way or another, you'll pay for it, where they give you a massive kit fund or whatever they do. But yeah, is it a way of life? Yeah, 100%. I mean, we've moved much more into the model that you run. We've moved away from that 1 to 10 market because it just drains you. And when they release a phone, you've got to have banked a lot of cash for when you have to go and buy probably 3,000 iPhones in a month. So you've got to think the networks pay you this way. I've still got to buy the phone. Have they commoditised the market? Yes and no. So you still, as a network, will pay someone like me to sell your services. Even as a network, they run their network, they've got their cost. But there's another thing it's done, which is the scariest thing, is that when there's a problem with an Apple phone or there's a problem with a Samsung phone, guess where you ring? Me. So guess what I've got to do? Put more resource in. Guess when you can't use your phone, what I have to do? Explain to you how to do it. So I've got to train people on it. Now, I've never got this. In my view, I mean, Apple don't get it. I said I don't like authority and I like to buck a trend, right? So I have this conversation all the time with senior people in Samsung. You can't get to senior people in Apple, by the way. That's impossible. That's the price. You buy it or you don't. And say, well, let's get this right. I buy a phone off you and I give it to one of our customers. When that phone goes wrong, I take the phone call. When that phone breaks, I take the phone call. When they don't know how to use it, I take the phone call. You don't pay me to do that, do you? My argument falls on deaf ears, as you can, but I have a lot of sport with it. But that means, from a resource point of view, for all businesses, whether it's us, whether it's Vodafone, EE, it means there's a lot more people. They're having to put a lot more people in to serve, and it's fantastic from a point of view of what it's done. But the more complex phones get, the more resource you have to get, and there's not a lot of difference now between a phone and a laptop. There just isn't. They're the same. They store the same things. They all go to the cloud. They're really the same.
My daughter runs her own business. She's 20. She doesn't have a laptop. She literally runs her business from her phone with apps. And that is what we see a lot of the particularly younger generation, Gen Z, millennial. Very rarely do they use a computer, and they're running their own business. And it's all on mobile phone. Everything from their banking to their invoicing, CRM. They don't use email generally nowadays. It's Instagram messaging or WhatsApp. It's a whole change in business overall now as the younger generation are coming up.
Oh, it's huge. I mean, I remember presenting something out 2017 or 2018, and it was the first time in one of those 2 years that Google searches were done more on mobile than they were on PCs or laptops. First time. But if you think about that logically, people travelling, when I go away, I don't take a laptop. I'll take a phone. Yeah. I can do the basics I need to do on a phone. I can get to what I need to get to. What do I need a laptop for? So I don't disagree. I mean, ultimately, they might find a battery that lasts longer than 5 minutes, but when they do, I think you'll end up plugging it into having a keyboard and a screen. I can see it. Yeah. They've tried it once. It will come back. Yeah.
Ultimately, you sold Wish.
Yep.
Presumably done okay?
Tough part of my life, that. So we grew it, the three of us grew it, and it was difficult. The dynamic was difficult. because it was three of us. We were all 33. There was a big shift in the market. So in about 2011, 2012, the city actually got smart. So the way the city used to measure the networks was how many new additions they had on. What they never looked at was what fell out the bottom. So if you can imagine us, not just us, but you as consumers, anybody, for you business, car phone. I'm on T-Mobile when T-Mobile's still about. I'm on T-Mobile, I've been there a year. I've got a great deal for you. I can move you to Vodafone. The next year, by the way, I can move you to O2. The year after that, I'm going to move you back to Orange. Now I'm going to keep going round in the circle. And the reason everybody did that was because the networks paid bonuses for new additions. So the city was seeing new additions. They never looked at what they lost. Then somebody looked at what they lost and went, you're not growing at all. You're standing still. So rightly so for the networks, they went, we're moving you to an ongoing revenue model, which means that if you lose, we lose, you lose. So we want net new additions, which is fine. That bit I understood. What then transpired when you looked at your numbers in your own business was, we ain't got enough cash to do this. We've got
payment, like
you buy all the phones. They were, to be fair, they were reasonably good with the transition. So they did help with the transition. But our model didn't work. Not with the volume. When we were 60 salespeople at that stage, we were probably 110 in the business. And it was, you have to hit these numbers to get there. That was simple. Now, what that then meant was you had to worry about relationships, retention, selling more products in. So we had to take a pure, what I would call, and it was a sales animal, and say, right, what do we want to do with it? Well, we don't need 60 salespeople. We probably need 20. And what we've got to do is retain, and we've got to grow. And we've got to sell some different products in. And we had to change the dynamics of the business. We went through that planning probably for 6 months. And between that stage, between who we were dealing with then and with us, there was a couple of things that weren't quite right. And ultimately we went, we're not going to survive this. We're just not. We're not big enough. We didn't have enough scale. I mean, we'd grown to 12 million of revenue. We still weren't big enough.
That sounds unfathomable to sit there and think that, because many people think like 12 million revenue, got to be a booming big business. But to hear you say that just almost sounds inconceivable.
No, but it's again, I don't blame Apple for all of it, by the way. I do blame, no, I don't really. I smile when I say it. But if we had 50, 60 salespeople. We paid good money to ourselves. We paid big commissions. But that model over that period of time changed. How do you go to a salesperson and go, by the way, our cost of sales has gone up because hardware's moved from 70 to 300 quid. So therefore, I need to reduce your salary. That nice 3 Series of driving is now going to be, I don't know, a Mini Metro. And by the way, I'm going to pay you half the commission. We would lose the whole lot. So it was very, very difficult to change. But ultimately, our model was flawed with the change that was coming. And there was nothing we could do about it. We knew the lifespan we had ahead of us. We knew how long we had. And we took a decision. As I've said to you before, I don't tend to look back on it. That's the decision we took. We sold to a partner, a fellow competitor, similar size to us at the time. They were probably 15 million in revenue. So combined, it was about a 30 million. It had to scale. They were obviously acquiring us, and 2 of us decided we'd go into their business. We took shares in their business. The other partner was bought out. Yeah, it didn't work very well. And I knew that from the first meeting. Yeah. And that's, I think, always a challenge. There were too many people around the table. There were too many egos. We were used to running it the way we ran it. They wanted to run it a different way. And when you've got 16, 17 people around the table, all having an opinion, you're just sitting there going, this isn't going to work. I hated it from day one. There were too many changes that happened. And ultimately, to a degree, had we done a gentleman's agreement, yes, to shake hands on what was going to happen should one of us not enjoy it. I went to walk away and expected my share to be paid out at the level I thought I had agreed. I was told that would happen. It didn't. Do you know what? For me, it was tough I think probably for my wife and for my children, probably the toughest time we'd had. So, we'd had 8 years growing a business. It wasn't like I wasn't earning bad money before I joined. So we'd probably bought our dream house, lovely cars, 2 boys in private school. I treated myself, I'm a petrol head. I treated myself to a lovely Ferrari, classical one. And we were living a great life, great holidays, wonderful. And that should have carried on. It didn't. And I had to have a really, what do you do? So I sat on a base salary for a year, waiting to be paid, and ultimately got to a stage where I went, this isn't going to happen. Now, fortunately, there were 2 of us in the same boat, because I think if it had been one of us, mentally, and we all love to sit here and say, I'm absolutely convinced I would have been in a world of trouble, because your life's crumbling around you. You've got no control, and I think that was the biggest problem for me. I've got no control. I was sitting waiting for them to do something or say something, and it went on and on. And it got to the December of that year, and both of us just went, enough's enough. Whatever happens, do you know what? I'd prefer to be out of it with no money and just go again. I can't deal with it. So we kind of took control of the situation then. It was messy. It ended up going, they tried to take us to, we ended up taking them to tribunal because they tried to take us as badly. It was horrible. But it needs to happen. We need to take control back of our lives. I certainly did. And I think probably 3 or 6 months after that is I kind of bumped into Brian Kingston, who was one of the founders of dbfb. And we were having a drink. I was saying, what are you doing? He was talking to his business. I said, all right, what size is it? He was telling me it was about 2.5 million turnover. It was local. I said, okay, great. How many people in it? 12. And, how do you buy? And my ears just went ping. And he went, we wholesale everything. I went, so you bill it. You own the customer. Now, my previous model was the network build it, which was messy. Totally messy. So that I went, oh, wow. Okay, brilliant. Now, how have you grown it? And what's your sales team like, Brian? What do you mean, sales team? And there was 2 of them. There was Pratesh, who's well known around the county, and there was Brian. So that's 2. What's your marketing team? Well, I had one of those. How'd you get leads then, exactly? And I was used to picking up phones, dialing and booking. Well, I do networking. What's networking? Well, I go to a chamber and I do this and I do this. And what, that works? Yeah. So I go and meet, what? And people ring you? Yeah. And I was sitting there going, I can't get my head around that. Right, so you go and speak to someone, if you go and have a wine with somebody, and you have a conversation at these events, you get to know, and when they're ready to do something, they just pick the phone up to you. He went, yeah, that's what happens. And I went, can't believe that for a minute. I was walking away again, that doesn't happen. What you do is you bang 90 numbers a day, you get your appointments, and then you go and sell it. So he got me intrigued. I said, look, I'd love to come and see it. And unfortunately, Bill, the other founder, wasn't well at that time. He was terminally ill with cancer. And I met with Brian, met with Bill. We agreed a price. I went, no problem. Obviously, at that stage, I'd gone through certain things. After selling the business, I was expecting some money to arrive. Happy days.
So just to recap, so I'm in the right area of the timeline. You was having this conversation before you was at the real dark point with coming out of the other business.
Yeah, I'd come out of the other business from an employment point of view. So the employment was done. Yeah. I was waiting on the shares to be paid.
Right, yeah.
Every month I get, no.
So you're writing the check ready for this?
Oh, I'd done due diligence on it. I'd engaged lawyers, tax, the lot. Yeah. Everything was done, ready to go. I'd signed heads of terms, by the way. Done.
Oh, you proper committed.
I was ready.
Right, okay.
And I then got the phone call to say what we thought was going to happen isn't going to happen, you're not going to get your money. At which stage I put the phone down and went, I can't even describe how I felt, if I'm honest with you. It was just, what the hell am I now? I've got no job. I've told 2 people they think I'm going to buy their business. And I've got this house.
And we're not talking like, £10.50.
It wasn't £10. I wish it was £10.50, but it wasn't.
We're talking seven figures, aren't we? So yeah.
And I've got 2 kids in school. What am I going to do? So I sat with my wife and probably cried in a good, I'd say glass, I'd be lying, it was probably a good couple of vinos, probably bottles to be fair. And we did that over a couple of days. And she was fantastic. I mean, she's a housewife, she's brilliant with the boys, brought them up, does all the running around for them. And she sat there and she said, what are your options? I went, well, I've been quite sensible, so I did take some money up front when we first sold the business, but a lot was due later on. I said, well, look, we're not a bad position. I think I'm going to get a reasonably good job with somebody. And, that'll be that. He said, is that what you really want to do? I went, no. What I really want to do is get my hands on that business, because if I can get my hands on that business, I can take that with the right people to something special. I know I can do it. So she sat there and went, look, I'll support you. I said, you understand what you're saying. That means we have to sell the house. That means we're selling everything we've got, every asset we've got. We might just be able to keep the kids in private school. That's as good as we're going to get, and we'll rent. Don't know what we can rent, by the way, because I don't know how much money we're going to have. So she had to think about it, and to this day I'm ever thankful. She went, I'll support you on it. That was one problem resolved. The next problem was I had to go and sit with Brian. And for anybody that knows Brian for me goes from here to here very quickly with a temperament, and he's lovely.
Yeah, I know Brian.
So I had to go and sit with him, and we met where the Miller and Carter is now. And again, humbling. Not very good at the humbling bit, but I was very humble, and I sat with him and said, Brian, I've got a major problem. The money I'm expecting is not coming through, and I can't transact. To be fair to him, he didn't go bananas. He could have done. He could have called me all the names on. He called me a couple, but not too bad for Brian. And he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I think there's an option, but I'm going to need your support. I said, I'm willing to sell my house and sell cars. We'll do all of that, and I can raise enough to buy him 50% with everything I've got. Then what I'll agree to is I'll grow it enough that I'll do an MBO within a year. And to be fair to him, we've got on famously before, we get on famously now, and it worked well. And that's kind of how dbfb came around. It was tough, and it's, we're still in rented today. So, we've ploughed everything we've got into the business, and at some stage, hopefully it will, it will pay dividend.
That's one hell of a recovery, I'd say, for that situation, which does speak volumes to the lengths to go to for that, but also having the support of the family behind how important that is.
Huge. Without that, I wouldn't have done it. Would I have regretted not? 100%. But it's your family, and the family comes first, and that support was huge. Even from the two, the boys now 14, 16, they get it. They come into the business now, and they occasionally do a bit of work. I don't probably just talk to everybody, but they do a bit of work. They get it, and they get the fact of why we had to do, which is tough for them. It's tough for my wife. She loves the home. She loves entertaining. Well, I took all that away in 2014. And 8 years down the road, I've still taken it away. Hopefully, I think we'll be there in the next year. But I would sit with anybody who's made money. And I think at any stage, everybody who's made money or owns their own business will have something similar to what I've just described. Because I can take you back to Wish. I can remember sitting there going, we'd won a deal. We had no money. 2 of us managed to get our hands on 2 credit cards, personal, and spend 80 grand on credit cards. Now, if that had gone wrong, we were done. In more ways than one, by the way. So if you're not, again, being a business owner is tough. Yeah. It's hard. You're not only looking after yourself, your family, you're also looking after every single one of your employees. And your responsibility is to make sure they get paid on time every month what they're due, because otherwise they can't afford to pay what they've got to pay. So it goes up, and you have to take risks.
You have to. My own business that I've run now was started on 3 credit cards. So I maxed one out, took out another, but I couldn't pay my mortgage with the credit card. So I then had to get a loan out, tell the bank that I was having some home improvements done, and to get the loan, and then I used the loan to pay my mortgage.
Yeah.
And you have to do that, and that, as you say, if it goes wrong, you're in
you're in big trouble. But yeah. I think, again, to run your own, I mean, you've got to have confidence in yourself, and that can be hard sometimes because we can all get our confidence not. But you have to be able to look at it and go, do I believe it's worth the risk? Yeah. Not a blind risk. If it's not worth it, don't do it. But do you have faith in yourself that you believe this business can get from here to here? And if you do, you will become creative. Whatever creativity you need to come up with, you'll come up with it. Credit cards is a great one. I mean, we've all done different things, but it's what it should be. I said earlier, we ended up going, right, there's all people that supply handsets. There's probably 4 or 5 big distributors. Well, go and open me an account with everyone, get me as much credit as you can, get put on stock by that one, and take them from that one, and just play them. And that's what you have to do. Don't do it to the smaller businesses, because that's not a great thing to do, because guess what? They're in the same shoes as you. But the big national businesses, I'm not going to hurt them by doing it. Everybody will do it once in a blue moon. But you have to be creative.
And a question really, you've explained what attracted you to dbfb.
Yep.
What made you go down the route of buying another company as opposed to starting up again?
I couldn't go through a startup process again. I went, God, I'm never going to get 20 BMWs. They're never going to give me that now. I love the fact, and I could have done it that way, but our industry now is quite difficult to get wholesale agreements. They're quite difficult to get, and they had that already. They were well established. I foolishly at the start believed that I would just stay in Northamptonshire, Milton Keynes, and grow a nice little business. That was stupidity on my behalf, because that's not my personality. And it allowed me to go and attract the best talent, I believe, in the marketplace into the business. Now, I did that day dot, another big risk. For me, I've got much better people than me in the business that run that business than me. They're better than me in nearly everything they do. Hopefully no one's told you, but if you ever get an email from me and I've sent it directly, you'll probably go, what the hell does that mean? I'm terrible. I write, my head's going about 20 times quicker than my fingers can go. So if ever I'm sending an important mail to customers, I have to get someone else to check it.
Same boat. The emails, people proofread my emails.
Have to. So and I've got people. It allowed me to bring the talent that I wanted to bring in, and I worked with some really good talent when we built our business. And I looked at it, took a step back, and went, "This is going to be painful for 4 years." And I modelled it out. I worked with my old FD, modelled it, and went, right. As long as we're growing at that level, we'll be fine. If we come off a little bit, there'll be challenges, but I'm not going to compromise on the people I want to bring in. One, because I work well with them, but 2, they're just smart people, and they can develop. And I went on people that weren't the finished article. I knew them, but my sales director, Sam Lee, he's grown beyond my wildest dreams, came in as, he was a salesperson. He was a bloody good salesperson, but he was a salesperson. He came in as sales and marketing director with a share in the business. Yeah. And he took a risk on me. Now, developed, and I'd put him up against anybody. And I'd be very surprised if he lost one. And he's good. And it's the same when you talk about my, Jamie's commercial. Phenomenal. Brilliant brain. Again, I think he's one of the best in the industry. And I could keep going. But I've brought people in either young or people that wanted that opportunity. Same as I did. I wanted an opportunity to run, own, and develop and grow a business on my own. I've done it with 2 others. I wanted to see if I could do it.
And with that journey, so you did the deal with Brian.
Yep.
Agreed to an MBO.
Yep.
So how has that journey been from that day to MBO? Well, I know it's happened, so to where DBF is now. How's that?
Listen, I'm not going to sit here, but it's been easy sailing, Richard, piece of cake. I'd be lying through my teeth. There's been challenges, of course there has. We've grown, we've got some recruitment wrong. We haven't got it right all the time. Cash has been challenging. All the things you have when you grow a business, and you run at pace. And I quite like, this sounds terrible, I quite like chaos. I quite like it when it's muck and bullets. That's when I'm in my element. When it's running normally and nicely, I get bored. I'm like, well, it's working now, I'm out of it. And I don't mean out of the business, I just mean let me find me something else that's broken and let me go and look at it and figure it out. That stuff I like doing. So finding an MBO was tough. Finding the funding was hard work. Hitting the numbers they wanted to hit was hard. Cash has been hard, but we've won. We've grown this thing. We've just closed our books out this year in September. So we've taken it from 2.5 million in 2016, end of our financial year, September 22, with just over 10. Profitability is great, cash is great, but that's come in the last 3 years. Our model is one that means as we sell more, we grow and the margins get better and tick down. So it's not a tough model. No model's tough. You've just got to understand which levers to pull that will have the impact on your P&L and balance sheet. So, it's been a. Do you know what? It's flown by, and I've loved it, even the tough times. And there's been tough times where I've had to make some tough calls again, whoever that's to, but I've loved doing it, and I've gone through it, so it doesn't feel so daunting. I think the daunting bit for me was we got to 2018, 2019, we were motoring. And bloody March comes along and COVID. And that for me was a month of, wow, spreadsheet, what's it mean? Well, I'm sure every business owner's done it. Every manager's probably done it. And ultimately, prior to furlough, if everybody's being honest, they were going through their numbers going, who I've got to get rid of. Because that was the outcome. That was, I was looking at it going, I don't want to do it, but I've got to do it. I've got to make some tough decisions, because if I don't make them, we're not making this. We're just not going to get through it, because we had a business that was shaped to this size and my cost levels were here and I had to sell. Well, who to? And how many were going to go pop? And who wasn't going to pay you? And how many were going to ask for support? All the questions, who knew? I was so bored of spreadsheets in that time.
I've got 2 last questions for you, which we'll run through. So I'm going to do them a different way round this time, though. The UK Business Forums is, we aim to support people coming into business or in early stages of business. You've been through a number of learning curves, if I put it that way. But also you've got the experience of growing your own business and then exiting your own business in,
I learned a lot from that. Let me tell you, if it happens again, I will do that very differently.
But also buying a business and going through an MBO. So based on sort of the breadth of experience you've got, what 3 pieces of advice would you give to a new to business owner? I
think the first thing is have a plan and be realistic. Don't pretend everything's going to be rosy. There will be surprises that you cannot forecast in a business. So be sensible with it. So if I'm looking at an acquisition, I will take 40% of their revenue off it when we bring it in, because I'm going to lose 40% of it. So I think be realistic, have a plan and a financial plan, and stick to your plan. The next bit for me, forget P&L, forget balance sheet. There is only one thing that matters: cash in your bank. For the first 2 years, the only reason you want profit is ego. There is no other reason. It is ego. Same as revenue. It's all ego. Who cares if you've got a 20, 30 million pound revenue business if you're making nothing? What's the point? So for those first 2 years, the only thing you need to worry about is cash. That is the number one thing. So get someone in your business that gets cash management, because without it, you're in a world of trouble.
I'd probably add into that and say that the cash isn't all yours either.
No, it's not yours. But you have to manage your cash. What's going out? What can you push? Get someone good. And the other one, if you are recruiting people, go for the best people. Just find, it's not necessarily that they are the finished article. Find someone who wants an opportunity. There are lots out there who want an opportunity to develop, want an opportunity to learn and earn. And if you get those three areas right, you've got a shot. It's tough. It is tough.
And the last one, more for you personally. Why do you do it? Why do you, with all these knocks and challenges and things that happen, the chaos, why do you put yourself through it?
I love a challenge, and I'm terrible. If I look at the business, why do I do it? I do it because I love the people I work with, and we just have such fun. We have fun doing it. I work at a fast pace. So if you ever go and speak to any of my staff, they'll always say one of my favourite phrases is, why is it taking so long? Why can't we do it quicker? What's taking long to close this deal? I want to go at a pace. We create a plan with everybody in the business. It's not a top-down, but I was taught this in GE and it's stuck with me ever since. Don't know why this one thing stuck with me, but it did. Which was, if you've got a challenge in the business and things aren't working, or you're getting complaints, whatever it may be, do you know the best people that know the problem in your business? Because it's not you. It's certainly not me. It's the people doing the work. And they'll tell you what you're doing wrong. And I love those sessions. And I'm not sitting here going, we've got 100 problems. But to improve things, I will go and sit with a team of people. So we've created a business improvement team, which is people from each area. And they sit down once a month and we give them a problem or something we want to improve. And they'll come up with a solution. They'll then come and present it out. And it's so simple what they come up with. We overcomplicate, and we think we're clever. And we overcomplicate everything. They make it so simple. So that, for me, is fantastic. I love watching talent come through. I love watching people develop. My biggest bit, as I've gone through my career, there's a number of people that have done it. I take pleasure out of watching people go and succeed. Now, whether that is in our business today or whether that is going to another business, I don't mind. And there's some great stories we've got where people are coming and they've gone from here to here. But it's great watching people develop. It's great being part of that journey. I obviously want to provide for my family, so I've got a bit of making up to do on that front in time. And I just think the challenge, I love it. I love business. And for me, it's, it sounds terrible. It's a bit of a game. It is a game. You're moving pieces here. You're moving pieces here. You're trying to keep up with the market here. What do you do here? How do you plan? What's next? And I get excited. I love getting up every day.
It's been fantastic speaking with you. It's a really interesting and roller coaster journey there. Plenty of little nuggets there for take on as well. So thank you very much for your time.
Absolute pleasure. Great to see you.
You too.
Thanks very much.